Welcome everyone to Business Planning 2023. I am Todd Bookspan. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder of Win by Noon. I've been in the mortgage world for 20 plus years. But I really got my start in grown-up life as a business planner. So I went through the entrepreneurship program at the University of Arizona. If any of you are Wildcats, feel free to, post bear down in the chat. And I went through the program there as an undergraduate, and it was 1/3 undergrad students, 2/3 graduate students getting their MBA. And I spent a whole year learning how to write a business plan. Thanks, Larry, the Beavers. That business plan was like this thick. It was like a big old thick business plan. We had a business plan competition. So when it comes to writing a business plan that you'd be submitting like to the SBA or to investors, I've done that. And what we're going to talk about today is really what I would call a simplified version of the business plan, something that's just a couple of pages long that you can really chunk down to one page. And so when you fast forward to when I got into the mortgage business, business planning was kind of in my heart and soul. And I learned really quick. I was coached by an organization called Building Champions, and they had a one-page business plan. And I learned real quick that one-page business plan was A, something easy for me to teach, B, something easy for me to hold people accountable to, and myself included, and that I was a way for me to make sure that I stayed laser focused and I was able to actually build relationship and rapport with business partners and help them grow their business. And then some of you know my story. I became a full-time coach for Building Champions for a couple of years. And then when I founded Win by Noon, I got the bug just to stay focused on that full-time. And that's more or less what I do these days. And so I'm super excited that you are all here. So real quick before we start, I got a couple of polls. And so this is just going to take there we go, Matt. I got a Wildcat on the call. That's awesome. And so let me real quick just throw out these couple of polls so I kind of know the audience we have here. So the first one is, what is your role? So just take a minute. Those of you who are listening, look at your screen for a second. Are you a loan officer branch manager, a real estate agent, insurance agent, realtor team leader? What are you? So I promoted this to the loan officer community. So I'm assuming you're all going to be loan officers, but I did put it in mortgage coach. So when I'm looking at this, between all of you, you're 100% either mortgage team leaders, branch managers, or loan officers. So we are almost 90% LOs and almost 10% of the others. All right. So then my next question is, let's see if I can get this next question up. All right. So my next question is tell me, are you a business planner? Like you crush it every year and this is just a refresher course for you? Are you someone who's done a business plan before but failed to execute, or are you just brand new to this? All right, so far, none of you are 100%. Oh, there we go. We got a couple of you. One of you is 100%. Two of you are 100%. So you guys are here for review. I love that. And then most of you, the majority, 60% are tried this before but didn't execute, and there's some newbies. So awesome. So that's helpful. So what I'm going to do is focus this on loan officers, since that's what you all do. And that was kind of my intention for this one. A lot of you know I'm going to be doing a real estate agent specific one next week. Don't remember the day, whatever, maybe Wednesday. I don't know. Someday I'll put the link up. In fact, I'll grab the link in a minute while I'm multitask. And my reason for that is today I'm going to walk you through business planning for yourself. And then I'll walk you through really quick how to business plan with partners. And then my goal of the one for next week is that a lot of you are still going to be intimidated by teaching this to others. So you'll be able to invite them to my webinar that I'm doing and say, hey, my friend and coach and mentor, whatever you want to call me, Todd from Win by Noon, he is hosting a webinar for me so that I can bring you along and have you learn from him. And then you'll be able to help them with their business plan afterwards. And then you'll be able to hold them accountable and help their business grow while, guess what, helping yours grow as well. So you already noticed the chat is open. So as we go, you can ask me questions. And what I would say is a couple of things. Number one is I may ignore your question until the end, but I'll answer questions at the end. And number two, we're gonna land the ship right in an hour, because I've got my group coaching group right after this. So I have to be fully fired up, not just for you all for 60 minutes, but for them for an additional 90 minutes. And super fired up about that. I get a lot of questions about the group coaching group. Next year, I'm going to be doing two of them that I'm going to launch in January. One of them is going to be the same one that I continue to do, which is really your own operating system, how to get your operating system and install it for you. It's really geared towards people who are looking to build systems and strategies, really based off of how I've built and scaled my own mortgage team. And then all those leaders in the industry that I've coached, what I've swiped and adapted from them and built into my presentation. And it's really designed for people who are struggling to consistently close 5 loans or more a month. So I've got a lot of mortgage companies that have put their newer loan officers in it, or even some of their top loan officers in my current group that I'm wrapping up here in a couple of weeks. And so if you're a leader and you're thinking, hey, who do I have that may benefit from hearing what I'm already teaching them, but from Todd's perspective, that may be a good opportunity. Or if you yourself are looking, hey, who can help hold me accountable, then that's a great piece for you. Then I'm going to do a second group, and I'll announce more details on that, which is going to be building referral relationships. So that's going to be laser focused on that, and strategies to do that, a lot of things that we've learned. So I'm going to get rolling. Someone's asking, are we recording this? Absolutely. Mindy, stay tuned. I'll be putting out lots of information on the coaching stuff. Transparently, if you went to sign up for it now, you'd actually be signing up for the current group, which you wouldn't want to do. And I'm just, once I refine that second offering, because I'm super excited about that second offering, then I will start posting it up for sure by the 15th. That's kind of my goal. So 9 days from now, it'll be up and running to give plenty of people time to get going on it. So as usual, I share my screen and show you guys all this stuff. I'll keep my smiling face here so you can see that it's really me live talking and going through this, and not some computer that's walking you through it. And so I already told you who I am. I'm Todd Bookspan. And so here's the key. So I have a free business planning tool that I've created. And I would tell you that for me personally, I actually print mine as a book so that I can open it up. And then I print it out and I do one for the whole year. Okay, so it's going to sound really weird because it's a quarterly business planning tool. So every month, every quarter, by the middle of the quarter. So like this month, we had it by the November 15th. We'll have it by February 15th of next year for Q2. So we put out a new quarterly planner every quarter for you. So that way you can update your thoughts. And so I'll walk you through what this tool looks like. And so after the webinar, go download the business planning tool. So some of you may have done that because I saw people doing it all morning. You just go to winbynoon.com/business planning tool. When you register for that, then it's going to shoot you an email. Now, you all work for mortgage companies, and your mortgage companies all have spam filters. So it's going to either go into your spam. If you use your personal email, it's going to go into your personal email spam, your promotions folder on Gmail. You have to pull it in there. So pull it in and mark me as a safe person. And then secondarily, the link that's in there, save that to your favorites on your computer, because that's the link that we're always going to be loading the business plan to. And so that way you can always have it, download it for yourself. So I do mine for the whole year, and then I'll also do one for the first quarter. So I always have two business plans going. I've always got my annual plan, and I've always got my quarterly plan going as we go through it. As always, if you have questions, reach out to me, todd@winbynoon.com. So again, those of you who just asked about the coaching program, just email me. I'll put you in my, I call it my waiting list. And then once it's out, I'll email you so you can know about it first. All right. That's funny. That's actually not accurate because this is a copy over it, but I'll leave it in there for full transparency. I am going to teach a life planning course. I have not announced it yet. It's not going to be next week. It's going to be the week after. So ignore the fact that this says it's December of last year. Although I really have updated this webinar, other than that one thing I forgot to delete, which I should have just skipped over really fast, but that'll hold me accountable. I'm super passionate about life planning, even more passionate about that than business planning. And I just taught it to a group of financial advisors last week, and you guys will all get that invitation as well. And so today's plan, whoops, all right, I'm going too fast. Let me use my little clicker. So I'm going to talk about why planning. And so, again, I could just jump right into the planning of it, here's the facts. But if I don't remind you why planning matters, then you might actually be part of the middle group who's not successful with planning. Then we're going to talk about the business planning tool. I'm going to dig into the ideal week, because really in the end, if you're going to execute, you have to understand the ideal week for you and for your realtor partners. And then the last part is I'll talk about how to do this with other people. And then again, we'll get you the information on the webinar for next week. I always get asked, do I have to be a Win by Noon user? No, I mean, that tool is free for anyone to use it. And for me personally, Win by Noon is my passion. A product that costs $20 a month is never going to make me independently wealthy or retire. But, the fact that I invest in real estate and going to make a big push in 2023 to help other loan officers learn how to get wealthy and teach others that, that's why I do Win by Noon. I do Win by Noon because I love it. All right, so why plan? So think about that for a second. I think you all know the answer to why plan, because we know the opposite of planning, and that's reacting. And if you're just reacting, then you're not really going to be successful at what you do. So a perfect example of that was yesterday. Some of you participated in, I did a 100-call challenge. And so I just got off my own coaching call, and he said, well, what made it successful for you? What were your epiphanies? And my number one epiphany was that preparation mattered. I had a list of more than 100 realtors to call. I actually made 110 realtor calls, and I talked to over 50 realtors. And those of you who were on it would know this. I actually was on Zoom. It was a Zoom meeting. Everyone could be in there and listening. And I literally had myself unmuted, had my phone sitting down on speakerphone, and everyone who was there, if they chose, most of them were dialing most of the time, but they could actually turn on their speaker, and then they could listen to me dialing. So they could listen to real conversations that I was having with real life, people, including, someone who did $1 billion of production last year, and 4 people who owned, either, Keller Williams franchises or other companies. And so it was a pretty cool experience. But for me, preparation was what made it effective, right? I cleared my calendar, number one. Number 2 is I had my list ready. Number 3 was I was meal prepped and ready. I went to bed early the night before. I had breakfast plan, I had a snack plan, I had a hydration plan, and I was ready to go. And then I had accountability, because I had all these people that knew I was going to be doing it and watching me do it. And so that accountability is what got me to dial till 5:30. I hit 100 calls at 4:45, 4:44 to be exact. And I could have quit there. I hit my goal, but I committed I was going to call till 5:30. I had a list that was longer than that I could go. And ironically made one of my best connections with someone who runs a big real estate team, owns a part of a Keller Williams franchise. And, I made that call at 5:05. He answered the phone, 15-minute conversation, was excited to catch up with me, and have never done any business with him. But guess what? Now I got an opportunity to meet with him and actually meet with his team as well, and, come up with some training. So that's why planning matters. And so ultimately, it's to push the right buttons to get you to do it. You guys all know this definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result, right? So let me just say that again. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And I feel like that's what most of us do, right? Those of you who see me speak before, some of this is going to sound familiar, but I feel like I got to drive it home again. Because again, if you're not doing the things that are going to get you there, I have a different microscope on me, right? I set up these accountability pieces. I set up these public declarations of what I'm going to do, primarily so that I do it. Because ultimately, I'm the first person who might not get it done if I am not holding myself accountable, right? That's what it comes down to. I set up these guardrails, one, because I'm trying to help you, but I'm also trying to keep myself on track. So this is a statistic from the Stratmore Group. 94% of loan officers arrive at their office with no plan. Think about that for a second. So I left loan officer out of here because when I teach this to realtors, I tell them the same thing. Because guess what? The first time I told this to a group, and they were all on a square table in front of me, and a loan officer had invited me in to speak to these 24 realtors. The broker was sitting to my left on the end, and she just laughed out loud. She's like, ha, 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 that's all of you too. So 94% arrive at the office with no plan, and therefore 91% have inconsistent month-over-month results, right? It's this roller coaster that we've all been on, even more so the last 6 months. And so my goal always is to help you become the person with a plan, because when you have a plan for every day, then guess what? You're going to execute at a higher level, right? You still may get distracted, right? My business partner, who runs our mortgage team with my wife, he made 78 calls yesterday. And he talked to 53 people. Now, one is he didn't clear the decks, right? He's like, oh, I'll be making calls while I'm driving around. And he could have been driving to pick up his kids from school, because he does that sometimes, or he could have been driving to a meeting. I have no idea. I didn't ask, but I challenged him to make those calls. And the funny thing, he said, gosh, it was amazing all those calls I had. He got 4 loan applications for making the calls. He was calling someone when I talked to him this morning. He did another loan application. And he's like, gosh, it's so funny, top of mind when you talk to a realtor and they give you a referral right after. And I was like, well, that's part of the ideal week that you're supposed to be doing. Hint, hint, hint. And so again, it's the fact that most people arrive at the office with no plan. And so what Darren Hardy would say is that when you walk into an office without a plan, that you're really walking around waiting for fires to put out, right? And where do you get those from? You get it typically from this thing. That's the little computer you carry around that has people texting you, calling you, and emailing you, and you typically react to who's ever yelling the loudest. And so again, we're going to talk about ideal week because it's really the solution to it. If you can believe that the ideal week is going to be the game changer in your career, then you're going to change your career. And then you just have to decide what your ideal week looks like for you. I'll walk you through what it looked like for me to grow my business 45% in 1 year, going from 80 million to 115 million. And so the whole idea is to work harder, not smarter, right? Whole idea, KISS, keep it simple. You know the last S. And so I love this example. I use it all the time. In fact, I've probably used it too much over the last 5 years, but NASA, right, space agency, when they were going to go to the moon in the 60s, right, JFK said, hey, we are going to go to the moon by the end of the decade. One of the challenges they had was they had to come up with a space pen, and the space pen had to write in gravity, no gravity, extreme heat, extreme cold, right side down, upside down, right side up. And so they actually invested a lot of energy into this zero gravity space pen. And it cost over $1 million at that time. Some people say $10 million, but either way, 7 figures for a freaking pen is what it cost. Super cool. You can buy it for like $5 on Amazon now. This says NASA, whatever their version of it is, in Russian. And we were competing against Sputnik at the time. They beat the US into the orbit in a, with a rocket, and we were going to make sure we beat them to the moon. And unfortunately for them, they didn't have $1 million or 10 million or whatever you call it budget to solve the same problem. So they used a pencil, because guess what? It does it. So think about this whole idea of thinking pencil, not space pen. And so when I do a one-page business plan versus that big thing I learned in the entrepreneurship program, there's a reason for it, because I know the more complex that we make it, the less likely we all are to execute, myself included. And so we're going to start with the past when it comes to business planning. And so this is where you all get kind of hung up. Now, one thing I'll tell you is that my current business planning tool does not have income on there. And I did that intentionally because personally for me, I did not want, when I was sitting down with a realtor partner and showing them my plan, I didn't want them to see this big income thing that I had, because again, some people are like, ooh, Todd's making too much money. I don't want to show that. And I also didn't want my team to see it transparently. So you could sort of decide, if you're going to think income, and we'll probably end up with it sometime next year, a second tool that'll show income on there. But really all you're going to do is take the income that you want. Okay. I don't have a slide for this, so write this down. The income that you want, and you're going to divide it by the average loan amount that you had this year. And that equals the number of loans you need to close next year. I would divide it by 12. I would get rid of seasonality. And then I would say that's the number of loans that I need to do. The other way you could do is you could divide it by the basis points you're paid. And then that would tell you then the number of the amount of volume that you need to close to get there. And then you can divide that by your average loan amount to get there just the same, to focus on volume. But again, a lot of people, I would say, we'll talk about in a second, are income driven. And so again, we're going to start with the past. We're going to start with results, because we know success leaves clues, right? I mean, that's just not, that's something we've all heard before. And so when you download the business planning tool, this is the top. The top thing is last year's totals. And all the time people email me, Todd, it's the wrong business plan. It says 2022 on the top. No, this is where you're going to finish the year, right? You can write it in pencil. It says family served, right? How many units closed, loan volume funded. And then for realtors, it says, right, family served, volume funded. I would tell you most of the time for number 3 here on the business side, I see income. But, again, think about what could be new CRM. It could be, hire an assistant. It could be something else. And then personal, again, what's that personal going to look like? I talked to somebody yesterday. They're like, I'm going to lose weight. Awesome. Right. So one of the realtors I talked to, and they just come from a goal planning class where I did a guest appearance for 5 minutes, told them what I was doing and told them I was going to be calling them. I expected them to answer my call when I called them. And so it's the specificity piece, which I'll talk about in a minute. But what are the personal things? How many days of vacation do you want next year? Right? Think about that. That would be great. Do you want to buy an investment property next year? Do you want to increase your net worth next year? What are those things that you could put there that are personal and tangible that could go on there? And so you're going to set the goals based on what you have data for. And so this data should be easy for you loan officers to get, right? You're going to go into your loan origination system and you're going to look at your closed loan report, and it's going to tell you what it is. And you're going to look at what is closing for December. And we're going to assume everything in your pipeline is going to close. And then that's what you're going to put in there for those numbers. And so again, you've got that data now. And so we're going to look at what did that look like this year? If you don't have that data, or you switch companies or something like that, you didn't track it, then just give it your best guess, right? Again, what do you think you did this year? And so again, you'll see this presentation is designed for loan officers and realtors, because I didn't know who else was going to show up, but for loan officers, right? Closed transactions, units, volume. And then you're also going to look at pre-quals issued, applications, and leads. Now, this is where I say you might have to use your best guess. Pre-quals issued, like my team has a system called an Establish. There's also one called SteadKey. There's other systems out there. Might just be where you have a folder where you've saved a PDF of your pre-qual letters, and you can see how many people did you do pre-quals for. So again, this is an opportunity for you to look at how many pre-quals you had, because what you really want to look at is what's your conversion rate between each category. And what I tend to find is most programs focus on closed applications and leads. But when I was coaching the best loan officers, the people that you've seen on stage all over the country, where their biggest opportunity was getting people from application to pre-qual. Because guess what? If someone's got a pre-qual letter, they're infinitely more likely to close. Applications, again, you can get that out of your loan origination system. Leads, you hopefully have in your CRM. And so this is the results side of the equation. And this is where most people focus. And this is probably the data that you will have. But, keep in mind, again, the cool part about this is, again, if you know that it takes you 4 leads to close 1 loan, and then your numbers that you backed in that you need to close 10 loans a month, then you need 40 leads to get there, right? So again, this is just a math equation, and you're all loan officers, so you should be pretty stinking smart at doing this. Right? When you're talking to your real estate agents, it's going to be closed transactions, unit volume, same exact thing. They can get it from their broker. And then they're going to be looking at their listing appointments, buyer appointments, and leads. Again, they're going to struggle with the listing appointments and buyer's appointments. And again, I literally would tell them to look at their calendar week by week, and then literally go in there and see what they had in their calendar all year to add it up. And then their leads, again, hopefully they have in a CRM. They might have it in a notebook. They might have it on a scratch piece of paper. But you're just going to use the data you have. The best day to plan an elm tree was 20 years ago. The best date to record your activities and results is today, if you're not doing it now. So again, you can start doing this from today and do that moving forward. People always ask me why personal goals, and it's, I'm just a big believer. You already saw it. I'm going to teach life planning coming up. Really, this is way more about, it's more than about business, right? We all want a great business so that we can fund a great life. For me, when I got crystal clear on what was most important to me personally, the experiences and the things that I did in my life improved. And that was really it for me. The reason I became laser focused at owning my calendar was, number one, out of frustration. I hadn't hit the vision that I wanted. I thought I was $1 million loan officer, $100 million loan officer, but I was stuck at 80 million for 3 straight years. And guess what? Those were 3 great years financially. But that next year, by blocking my morning from 8:30 to 11:30 and focusing on my ideal week, grew the business 45% in a flat market year over year, didn't add a new builder, didn't add a big whale realtor. I was just more consistent. My conversion rates increased. People referred me more business who I was doing business with because I was doing a better job of converting their referrals and their leads, and hit that goal, actually blew through that goal. It was working smarter, not harder. It didn't take me any more time than it took to do the way that wasn't working. And in fact, it took me less time with a lot less stress. I also feel that relationships matter. And so as we're going through on this tool, you'll see that there's a spot in there we'll talk about in a sec where relationships matter. And so this whole idea of life balance, I don't really know that there is balance in life. It's always give and take, right? I mean, I can tell you that when COVID hit, I don't really talk about it much out publicly. But when COVID hit, guess what happened? Like all my speaking gigs, everything else I was going to do kind of died. My 30th anniversary trip to Spain went away, and my team was sitting there drowning in loans. And so a lot of people joke because I stopped doing loans in 2016. They're like, oh, Todd's a has-been. He's never done it. Well, guess what? I actually helped my team personally during COVID close over 600 loans. And that was a guy who hadn't done mortgages for 4 years. And now I'm back out of the business, handed that back off to a team member who has his 1-year anniversary today working for the team. And But I can tell you that I had to go out of balance with my family to do that, right? We had to say, hey, kids, we're going to be in the office. Literally, we were in for 7 days a week when COVID hit, because we had loans, raining from the sky. And so there's give and take, right? And so for us, then we bought an Airstream and hit the road. Some of you know that story. And we did loans from the road. It was a blast, but we also made sure we had that balance, but it definitely wasn't a balanced life during that time. And so the next thing on there is thoughts and adjustments, changes for 2023. And so this could be bullet points for you, or this could be a story that you write. You might need a second page of paper for it if you're going to write out the story, but really look at what you did this year, this past year, and think about those things. Kind of think about like a keep, improve, start, stop. Like, what do I want to keep doing? What do I want to improve that I'm doing to make it better? What do I want to start doing that I'm seeing other people do that I wish I was doing? And then what do I want to stop doing, right? And just think through that. Like, look at your business and realize, what do you think you want to change in your business and in your life, this year. And so I can tell you, for me, one of my number one things is I'm going to be ridiculously good at saying no. And a perfect example of that is where last year, if you bought 10 copies of Win by Noon, I personally might teach a class to you and your realtors. Well, in 2023, and really the last 90 days, if you buy 10 copies of Win by Noon to give to your realtors, it's not going to be me teaching, it's going to be Adam. Unfortunately, I have to say no to that because I have to be focused on other opportunities. Not that that's not important. In fact, it's extremely important to me. That's really how we're growing Win by Noon. But it's just not the best thing for me to do. So I had to put that as one of my thoughts and adjustments for next year. And so again, let's look at next year. Like, what are those goals going to be? And again, I have a lot of people who are just, my encouragement for you would be to stretch this a little bit. So I'll tell you, if you looked at my plan for my team last year, my team plan said 120 million, and it said 150 million as a stretch goal. And we're going to end up at about 110 million. And I actually really thought until about 90 days ago that we'd still hit 120. So I hit a goal that was going to be hard to reach as for a team, and I hit a stretch goal. And so I always love that idea of doing a stretch goal or doing more. But this is really where you're taking, okay, what did I do last year and what do I want to make sure I do this year? Right? You guys all know this thing about SMART goals. And so let's just talk about it for a second. Specific, right? Again, the easiest one to say is I'm not going to say I'm going to lose weight, is I'm going to lose 10 pounds or I'm going to weigh 160 pounds, right? Be specific about it. Measurable, right? How, what does that look like? So for me, you guys, somebody see my Facebook post, I got this really cool sauna. It's just right out there in a plunge in my backyard. And so my minimum standard is to do it a minimum of 4 days a week. So I'm really specific about it. And I know I'm going to do it for 20 minutes in the sauna, and I'm going to do it for a minimum of 3 with a goal of 5 minutes in the cold plunge because I'm a wuss and I do not like cold water. Achievable, right? Again, you don't want to say I'm going to do it 7 days a week. If it's not achievable, do it 7 days a week. I guess it could be, but I'm also not going to say, if I was, need to lose 50 pounds, I'm not going to say I'm going to lose 50 pounds in 3 months. That's not achievable in a healthy way, at least. Relevant. It's got to be relevant to what you're trying to do. My goal is to train for old age. And so it's super relevant to me to use my plunge and my sauna for that. Time sensitive, right? By when, like, when am I going to do these things? So for me personally, I'm going to hire an assistant. And so I've submitted some by whens. I've got to get to my coach by 5 o'clock tomorrow, who I'm going to use to hire to help me find this person, or where else I'm going to reach out, what resources I'm going to do. And I've got to do it by tomorrow. And my goal is to hire someone before the first week of January of 2023. And then stretch it just a little bit, right? Like, why not stretch? Maybe I can stretch to 5 days a week of my piece, but what would push you just a little bit, right? And so I start off with annual and then I go to quarterly, right? So the next page is the quarterly page after the annual page. We do 2 reasons. One is easier when you break it down, right? We want to do small bite-sized chunks, right? How do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. And it also forces you to meet with your accountability partner, right? If you did a yearly goal, you might not reach out to them, but if you do a quarterly planner with them, I hate to say it this way, your lowest producing referral sources that you help with a business plan, at least once a month, you're going to connect with them, right? And so we'll talk about that accountability when we get to the end. And so here's your Q1 goals. I'm a believer in averages. For me personally, I would just take my goal. If my goal was 100 loans next year, then I would just say 25 a quarter. If it's 40 loans, I'd say 10 a quarter. If you're really good at your seasonality and you can adjust it out and you can say, okay, I'm going to do, I'm going to do 100 loans, but I know I'm going to do 20% in the first and the fourth quarters, and I'm going to do 30% in second and third quarters. Great. But seasonality to me is hard to predict. But if you know your seasonality, great, do it that way. I would just divide it out. And then again, what is that personal goal? Chunk that down. Right? It starts to get harder after this, right? I already talked about this whole idea of keeping it simple, silly. I don't want to insult anybody. And so the ultimate goal is to figure out which activities and how many. And this is really, I think, the hardest part. And this is where I think most coaching organizations fall short, right? They're so focused on the result, but they're not really talking about the activities and how many of the activities lead to those results, right? We already said success leaves clues. And so I want to ask you, do you know what activities you need to do every day to meet your goals? And so I got a buddy, his name's Templeton Walker. He's a little bit of a crazy dude, but you should follow him on social. Really interesting guy. And when I saw him speak at an event that I was speaking at, he got up there and said this exact thing. Do you know what you need to do every day in order to meet your goals? And he could tell at that group, he said, I can call 40 friends and I can get a deal. I can knock 100 doors and get a deal. I can send out X number of emails and get a deal. Like, he knew exactly what his numbers were. And my question is, do you? And so I can just tell you this, when I was doing loans, I could tell you exactly how many calls I had to make in order to get a transaction. In fact, I can tell you that during COVID, when I was doing loans, that if I made 21 phone calls, I got a closed transaction. And I can tell you when it started to slow down, and as I was peeling out of it, it was actually 28, 29 phone calls in order to get one closed transaction. I could see the market shifting before the market shifted, because I could see that it took more activities for me to get the results that I was after. So your job is to connect the dots, right? And this tool is designed to help you do that. You just have to start tracking the results if you're not already, and then you have to start recording those activities. And so you have to be really intentional with the activities you choose to prioritize, right? Like I said, I'm already going to be choosy in 2023 about what I say yes to and what I say no to. You got to set up your own boundaries so that you're not the person looking to put out fires, that you're not the 91% that have inconsistent month over month business. Look at, I got ahead of myself. See, I'm so excited about my oak tree thing. So again, we know that part of it. So the bottom line is start recording your activities now. Yesterday, we had all these loan officers on this, over 30, all throughout the day. Even at the end of the day at 5:30, we still had, 10 loan officers dialing, but we had like 20 to 25, all on Zoom. It was super cool. Not everyone was brave enough to be on camera. But somebody said, hey, I've talked to, I was like, hey, here's every hour I was reporting what my results looked like. And so I was reporting number of calls and number of conversations. And someone said, hey, here's how many conversations I've had, but I didn't record the calls it took. But wouldn't it be nice to know? Like for me, I was hoping I could make 2 calls for 1 conversation. And it took me slightly more than that, whatever that number is. If you divide 110 by 51 by 110, I mean, that's what it took me. In fact, I really hoped the 51st conversation, I was hoping they didn't pick up, because I kind of like round numbers, but I would like, 110 and 50, but I really wanted 150. It just didn't happen. It's funny because my phone's been blowing up today with people who didn't answer my call or call me back yesterday that are reaching out, setting appointments with me. And so again, once you record activities, then you can determine the rest. And so again, just start now, because I think it's super powerful, right? I mean, wouldn't it be cool to know exactly how much money you make for every time you pick up the phone? I don't remember what the number is now, but I knew exactly what each of those phone calls was worth at 21. How about this? Let's pretend I made $2,100 for a loan. And that meant every one of those calls I made was a $100 phone call. I mean, think about that. I mean, that's freaking cool. At least to me it is. I don't know if you're as nerdy as I am, but for me, that was really cool. And so again, here's where we're going to start putting in our goals. And so again, for those of you who've never recorded this before, and don't really know these numbers, you have to pick out what your results were. And again, if you can, you should be able to get a lot of this stuff out of your CRM. You can get closed out of your loan origination system. You get pre-quals if you have tracked apps you can get out of your system. Again, because wouldn't it be nice to know every 2 applications I get a closed transaction, every 3 applications I get a closed transaction, because this is how you get to determine what your income is at the end of the year, right? Because in the end, if you know it's going to take 30 phone calls to get a lead, or let's pretend it takes 15 phone calls to get a lead, and it takes 2 leads to get a closed loan, then you have to do 30 calls to make a closed loan. And so you get to decide, how many loans do I want to do? If I'm going to do 5 loans a week and I'm working 5 days a week, then I better make 30 calls a day to get 2 leads to get 1 closed loan. So really this tells you how hard you have to work every day if you choose to record the activities and track the results. If you've never done it, again, you can do it between now and the end of the year, and then maybe tweak this number later. But I would take your best guess now, based off of what you find in your system from last year. If you've never done it before, then great, you're going to start now, and then you're just going to project it to next year, and you're going to course correct as each quarter goes, right? When by new users can correct every week, right? As I saw that it was taking 21, then 22, then 24, I was course correcting the number of calls. I went from making 100 calls to 150 calls in a given week, and I was really forcing myself to do it. Why? Number one, I was driven, right? I was driven for the result that I was looking for. Number two, if I was going to work that hard, I did not want to not have the financial reward there. 3, actually, I really like helping people, right? We were saving a ton of people money. That was awesome. And then 4, I get to use that as an example when I'm out there teaching, and again, you have to lead by example. And so I have that extra layer of accountability that I want you all to have. And so this is what it looks like for real estate agents, right? They're going to track different activities: buyer and seller leads, qualified buyers, right? Cash buyer or someone that you've issued a pre-qual for, listings, escrows, database ads, buyer and seller close for total close. And there's always a blank there where you can pick something else that you want to track, right? When you go back to the loan officer one, again, it has new in process. We just did that to mirror this escrows, loan. It wasn't important to me personally, but it could tell you what your fallout is, right? Typically if I'm putting 5 loans in process, I want 5 loans closed, but maybe it takes 6 loans in process to get 5 closed. So it's just one more metric, but it's something that realtors all track. So therefore, we just mirrored it in Win by Noon. All right, weekly activity commitments. All right, so we had a bunch of chat stuff. So let me just real quick peek and see if there's anything here. All right, so people are asking, all right, so anyone who wants to do I'm actually doing 100 calls next Monday and 100 calls the following Tuesday. Email me, todd@winbynoon.com. I'll send you the link to it, or you can find the link on posted to the Mortgage Coach page, or maybe at the very end I can get that going. Someone asked me if I use an auto dialer. Nope, I just dial by hand. Most people, again, I save them in my phone, and so therefore I can call them. So I was trying to save the people I was calling who weren't in my phone for the next time I call to be faster. But we do have some people who use auto dialers, and they kick the serious ass. Someone says, do you count calls your assistant makes? Yeah, I would, right? So Shay's the guy on my team. And as I was training Shay and then getting back out of loans completely, I was adding his activity to my activity, because ultimately in that equaled what I would have done on myself, because I wanted to see what does it take us as a team to get there. So I personally think that's a best practice. Great question. All right, so here's the activity commitments, and here's the part that most of you have never done. Or some of you have done it, maybe not consistently. And then there's a handful of rock stars on here who probably have continued to do this. And so again, a lead call, right? You can just do total calls. So you've got calls to clients, right? Either leads or actual clients. That's someone either you're currently helping that has already applied, or a past client, a referral partner, someone who you're already working with, partner prospecting calls. Again, I label those differently, but in the old days of Win by Noon, we had lead and client calls as one, and we had total partner calls. And we've since split those out just because some people have asked us to do that. Quality conversations. How many people am I talking to? Live meetings could be on Zoom, face-to-face. And what I would say is, for me personally, like I even still today with what I do with business development, reaching out to realtors, what I do with Win by Noon and trying to build that community, I'm tracking who I talk to and how many people I meet with either live or in Zoom. And again, I've got some people who are really focused on the number of dials they make. I got some people who are focused on the number of people they talk to or meet with. Some people combine the two. I would just tell you right now, I think the number is probably 100 a week. It's a big number for people that you talk to. That's more than, hey, can I call you back? Click, right? If someone texted me yesterday and said, hey, I'll call you later, that didn't count as a conversation. But I had people who I conversed with back and forth and set up appointments with via text. That was absolutely a conversation. And then who do you meet with live? And so, think about those things in your world. And so for me, I would say if I have 100 between the two, then I feel pretty good about my week. Some of you are like, well, I'm newer, I don't have that many people in my world. Then maybe it's 20 for you or 50 for you. But again, I would consider pushing yourself. How many prospect meetings do you have? We have annual mortgage reviews, TCA. Of course, you guys who are in the mortgage coach community know that stands for total cost analysis. Why is it in there? Because if you're doing an annual review, I think you should be doing a TCA, and I don't own any part of Mortgage Coach. I never have, and unfortunately probably never will. But I'm a big believer in it because it's something that made my career great and transparently has helped my team convert at a higher rate than other teams with less price exceptions than other teams because of the total cost analysis. And then the last one is, what else would you want to have as an activity to track? Door knocking seems to be the most popular one that I see there. Some people are putting handwritten notes there, although you'll see it, I've got it in another spot. And so that's for loan officers. And then for real estate agents, again, buyers, seller leads, seller calls, client calls, database calls. Again, for them, clients in process, we're currently doing a transaction. We, either have you pre-qualified, and I'm taking you out shopping, or I've got your listing and I'm just giving you update database calls, right? Again, they're calling their database, who they talk to, who they meet with. Some people do prospecting hours. So like for me, I did 9.5 hours of prospecting yesterday, and it was a long day, I won't lie. But I did that for my real estate teams. I've got a lot of big teams in the country that use Win by Noon, and they actually are on the dialer for 2 to 3 hours a day. And so therefore, they didn't want the number of calls, they wanted the time prospecting, because for them, that's their minimum standard. And then real estate reviews is something I consider a part of the ideal week, which we'll talk about. So, activities matter. And again, I think that those of you who are only tracking results should consider recording your activities, because activities lead to results. Habits of success is on there too. And again, people are like, why would you have this on here, Todd? This isn't business, but absolutely it's business, right? On time is working on your business, not in your business. For me, I have to schedule typically a minimum of 4 hours of on time where I'm working on systems. I'm working on my PowerPoints for these presentations. Putting it into Zoom. I mean, just things where I'm working on the business versus working in the business, right? Social media posts for hours. I track that because Deborah Bird makes me, and because ultimately I want to know, am I getting sucked in the rabbit hole of spending too much time on social? Handwritten notes, sleep. Again, I already told you I'm training for old age. It's super important to me. You may see that I'm wearing this Oura ring on my finger. It tells me whether I slept good or not. Exercise, morning routine, evening routine, new habit. So for me, I spell all these things out. So my morning routine says, in my plan, it says, gratitudes. It says, personal reading. And personal reading for me is something spiritual or, something like that. Personal reading too would be self-development reading, right? So I'm reading like 5 different books right now. Some are homework assignments and some are just personal things I'm passionate about. And so again, it's reading, reading those things. It's meditation, it's stretching, and then, running, right? Running, hiking, or walking minimum of 5 days a week. With my wife. So again, more specificity matters. My evening routine, right? Power down, 1 hour before bed. No lights. I wear nerdy orange glasses that block out the blue light. I'm off my computer. I'm off my phone. I stop eating a minimum of 2 hours before I go to bed with a target of 3 hours. Because again, your digestion impacts your sleep, and I'm trying to sleep better to train for old age. And then what's a new habit that I'm looking to implement? Because again, if I can implement at least one new habit a quarter, think about that. The growth that I've had over the years from being really committed to that. And a reminder, life is just more than business. And so we have this last thing on here, critical relationships. And I give Adam Nelson, my right-hand and win by noon, credit for this. We had space and he created this. And I thought that's really kind of silly. And then I started using it and it's become one of the favorite things. Who are the most important people this next quarter to you? So for me, it always says family. And I don't just put family. I put Tara, Lacey, Emmeline, Giselle, my daughters, mom, dad, Neil, Greg, my brothers, right? These are my family relationships. And I write it down there to remind myself that I want to make sure I'm intentional about getting together with them, right? I met with my brothers, this past weekend. We all got together just to catch up because we don't do that enough, and in person, and maybe enjoy a craft beer since that's something that we tend to do. Who else is important, right? I'm going to write down my team member's name, right? Shay, super important to me because guess what? Shay is the person that's running that piece of production, right? Dave Savage. Who are these other people in my life that are important to me, relationships that I want to be intentional about connecting with them and what I do. So one of these things that we have is SOS, and our clients have SOS, and our friends have SOS, and our partners have it, right? It's shiny object syndrome. We're always looking out there for that good idea. And so what I tend to find is we don't have a system to capture those ideas when we have them. And so we have the quarter ahead idea list. So for me personally, this has been one of the game changers for me for 2 reasons. Number one is I don't forget. So I was at a meeting this morning with guy who runs a local brokerage. He recruits luxury agents. He had a meeting to get my opinion on something, and he mentioned 2 things that I'd never heard of. So where did they go? They went onto my idea list because they're 2 things that it's worth me checking out. And then it allows me to prioritize without forgetting that. So then I can go through there and I can prioritize each quarter. I can say, okay, this was on my list last quarter. Does it make it to the list the next quarter? And then I'm picking out the best ideas, 1, 2, or 3 at a time, and executing on those ideas. And so this is really critical. It's underutilized, but it's get it out of your brain and onto paper. Mind like water is what David Allen would say, who did Getting Things Done. And so the whole idea also is to reduce something that takes too long and increase something that can add more value. So let me say that again, right? Reduce something that takes too long and increase something to add more value, right? So we're looking at what other systems can we streamline, right? Or what process can we streamline? Again, so be thinking about these things. We already kind of had a little piece on it above, but these are going to be things that we're looking for that we want to put on this list as you think about them. And so this is just an incubator, right? It's just the pot, the kettle on the stove that you're putting these things in to think about them so that when you do your on time, you can be intentional about which project you start or which product you research. Because what I used to do was just sign up for things and spend money at a time where we don't want to be spending money on things we don't need. And so instead, I'm really intentional about it now. I finish one thing before I move on to the next. I joke about the fact that I'm reading 5 books, but each one has a different piece and each one has a different priority. And so think about what else you can eliminate, right? Shiny object syndrome, like you're a squirrel, right? So that's where the project list comes in. There's 3 of them in there. And the reason that most people don't finish a project is because they haven't intentionally thought about the first 3 steps to get it going. And so again, you have to have specificity. There's a planned completion date. There's a title for your project. And then you can put in there the steps. And so again, most people don't ever start a project because they haven't thought about the steps, I just typically write 1, 2, up to 5 steps. It's kind of like the Pringle, right? You know, you eat in a can of Pringles potato chips, you eat one and you can't stop. You got to eat like half the can or more. And this is your Pringle to get it going. I've got a project planning tool. You can always email me. I'll send it to you if you really want to take it to the next level. But for me personally, knowing the steps of the project, sometimes it's who to put the project to, right? It might be meet with Adam so I can get Adam going on the project, right? And so, but this is the way I say focus on my top 3 projects, because I'm looking at this minimum of once a week. Sometimes at the beginning of the quarter, I'll look at this every single day. But ultimately, I'm looking at it as the quarter progresses once a week to make sure I'm on track. And then have I finished that project? Can I move on to the next one that's on that list? Because if not, that shiny object syndrome takes over and I may do more, right? And so we all know this, right? None of us ever thought we were going to grow up and be a loan officer. None of us ever thought we were going to grow up and be a realtor. Maybe a couple of you have, but ultimately that's just not normal. And so at that same seminar that I spoke at, where Templeton said, hey, do you know what you have to do every day in order to reach your goals? Another guy got up there and he said to all these realtors, you got in the real estate business. So I'm just going to say to you guys, you got in the loan business to set your own hours. And that is the exact reason you fail. And he was looking at his team, he's looking at their recruits, and he said this to him, like, this is the reason you're failing, because you got in this business to set your own hours. And ultimately, in the end, that's what it boils down to, right? Again, I'm not going to name any names or call anyone out, but I had so many people who weren't in the game yesterday who committed to doing minimum of 50 calls, target of 100 calls, who just were like, oh yeah, I overslept, I had a meeting, someone walked in, I had a loan emergency, other things that were probably important. A loan emergency would probably be super important, but really people allowed things to get in their way. And that's the reason that you fail, but it's this whole idea that you don't actually have a set schedule. And so that's really where you're this dog chasing your tail. And so you really need a committed schedule of activities if you're going to crush your business plan, right? So now we know what our goal is. We know what the activities are that we are, the results that we're looking for to get to our goal. We know what the activities are that we need to get there. And now we actually need to make the time and build out the schedule to do it. And so the last page of the business plan is, what does your ideal week look like? Now, I'm a nerd. It's sitting on the table. It came all rolled up into tight rolls. So I rolled it the opposite way so it'll be flatter when I hang it on my wall. But I actually have this big old, I don't know how big it is, 2 by 3 feet of the ideal week. So I'm going to write out my ideal week big on my wall as a reminder to me to not allow other things to get in my way, to be not be the 94% with no plan, be the 6% that have a plan every single day. And so, you just have to really think about it. Because I believe if you own your week, you own your business and your life. And now here's where when I teach it live, I ask people, hey, who here worked at McDonald's? Who here worked at Starbucks, right? When you have a job, you have to show up at a certain time. You have certain responsibilities you have to do, or you get fired, right? And the problem is you're in charge of your own schedule, or you're a leader who's leading other people and not requiring them to have a schedule. So my most successful real estate teams that my team works with, they have required hours to dial every day. I already said 2 to 3 hours a day. They're in the office dialing side by side. Even if they got to drive 30 minutes or an hour to get there, they're in the office dialing, because that's a requirement to be on their team. And guess what? They're really high performance teams. When I blocked my calendar to 8:30 to 11:30 to do these activities I'm going to walk you through, guess what? I grew my business 45% a year, where rates stayed the same. Real estate transactions in our city stayed the same. I didn't land a whale team. I didn't land a builder. I just did a better job of doing my job because I owned my week. And it gave me so much freedom, a lot of freedom. And so I divide into 2 different types of activities. You have win by noon daily disciplines, right? These are daily disciplines that you and your job need to do every day if you're going to convert at the highest level. Then we have target day activities, right? And again, this isn't original to me, but ultimately it's original to me that you're going to freaking get it done by noon. And these are activities that we're going to put in different days. And again, so when I say ideal week, I'm going to walk you through my personal ideal week that worked for me and has worked for thousands of loan officers since then. And you can move the days around. And if you have a different day, you do it, great. And my question for you is, are you doing it consistently? And if you can't keep my eye contact because you're not doing it consistently, then think about maybe there's a reason why I picked the day that I picked. And so that we can kind of talk through it. Because ultimately, in the end, our goal is to get you from where you are to where you want to be, which are your goals, right? That's the whole point of the business plan. So these daily disciplines are calling leads every freaking day, right? The reason I converted more leads is, guess what? I called them a lot, right? I didn't call them when I had time or made time. I called them every day. I even did 3 months where I was in a real estate office where they had to call every day from 9 to noon. And guess what? I sat there 9 to noon. I made all my calls. Like, that was the best, because I not only did I get them done, but I had the extra layer of accountability because I didn't have a choice. I was sitting there and they were all watching me. They were all seeing me, and they loved it that I was there doing what they were doing alongside of them. And they didn't care that I was doing it for other real estate teams, real estate agents. But I did it, right? We're going to call people in our sphere for a realtor, right? They all have that, they're better at calling their database than we are, but this is the realtor when they're calling their sphere. And then you loan officers are going to call your applicants who haven't gotten a pre-qual letter out yet. You've got those people. I already said it's probably the biggest opportunity you have. You know who they are, the person who you need that one extra year-end pay stub to see if you can use their overtime, or you need the tax return to figure out if you can use their commission, right? All those kinds of things that you might not have gotten yet, but you know that they're infinitely more likely to buy with you when you give them that piece of paper that says they're pre-qualified and ready to go. And so this is a call that you should be making every day. Now, of course, if they tell you on Tuesday, I'll have it to you by Friday, then all you're gonna do is write in your calendar on Friday, call the Smiths to make sure, if they haven't gotten me that document, right? You have to have that follow-up plan to get these people to do what they committed to do. Remember, your real estate partners you've committed your real estate partners that you are going to be their partner, and they're counting on you to convert their leads. They're counting on you to help them feed themselves, feed their families, pay their mortgage. And it was amazing how much more rewarded I felt because they were so happy with the fact that I was converting at a higher rate, right? So target day activities, let's just walk through that. It's kind of like spirit days for your kids. I was not young enough to have these cool things like crazy hair day, pajama day, but my kids had it and I was super jealous. We do this to become more efficient and more consistent. Okay. So here's how you're more efficient, right? So for me, I went into my CRM and printed out all the transactions from 2020 to 2020 till now that my team did, the listing agents. I was more efficient. I could go in there, print this all out and call them, right? Anytime that you do one thing on one day that you have in one place, you're more efficient because you're not having to bounce all around. I was more efficient making my calls because I was focused on those calls yesterday. You're more consistent because when you tell people this is the day I'm going to do something with you, then you better dang well do it, right? When I say I'm going to call 100 calls, I could have called 85 and you guys have been like, wow, that's pretty good, Todd, you did 85. But I said I was going to call 100. And I would have been satisfied at 85 because last time I did it, I only called 84. But this time I was freaking committed. I cleared my calendar. I made sure I was set up for success. And so on Mondays, you're going to do your lead calls. If you're a realtor, you're going to call your sphere. If you're a loan officer, you're going to call the people who've applied and you haven't gotten over the hump. You're also going to review, right? Weekly review. What were my numbers last week? You're going to total up the numbers. Right? You're going to plan for your week. You're going to set your intentions for this week. Great. I did 90 quality conversations last week. I didn't get the number of leads I wanted. I'm going to commit to 100 this week, right? You're going to plan and commit for the week. You're going to launch your week by figuring out what else do I have to do. Hopefully you have gotten a contract over the weekend and you can follow up and get that contract launched in the process. If I talked to a realtor last week and they told me they were going to have an open house, guess what? I'm calling them on Monday to say, hey, do you have any leads for me? How did the open house go? Oh, by the way, do you have any leads for me? Realtor are going out looking at houses who are pre-qualified. Guess what? They're going to be written in my planner. And I'm going to remember on Monday to call them. If I hadn't gotten a contract in my email, I'm going to call them and say, hey, how did the shopping go? Do you need me to call a listing agent, right? Do you need me to run numbers for the client? Call the client. How is shopping? Do you need me to run any numbers, right? I mean, this is your opportunity to make sure you get your week set up for success. You're going to type any loose ends too. Anyone who canceled a meeting last week that you want to be really intentional to get a meeting set for this week, you're going to do that, right? Tuesday, you are going to call leads. You're going to call your sphere. You're going to call loan applicants who you haven't converted yet. And we're going to call, for a real estate agent, we're going to call our in escrow for update calls. For a loan officer, we're going to do our loan status update calls, right? Again, this is something that we know lots of people do, but they don't do it consistently. How are you going to get a listing agent to send you business in the future? By calling them, right? You're going to call the client, you're going to call the buyer's agent, you're going to call the seller's agent, you're going to call transaction coordinator if they have one, because this is the person who's making the magic happen. And he or she is your secret to your success. If they have another realtor that they work with who's having a distressed transaction, they love you because you communicate the best, they're going to choose you. I'm going to just be telling them what's going on, right? It's super easy. What's next, right? Wednesday, leads, sphere if you're a realtor, loan officer, you're going to be following up on applicants that haven't gotten across the finish line. And this is pipeline protection day. Why? Because your clients and probably you have an internet addiction, right? So real estate agents are going to be doing buyer and seller calls that aren't in escrow. Loan officers, you're going to be calling pre-qualified clients. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to let them know what's going on with the rate and market. Super boring, but you can do it. Program updates, right? We all did that call last week to clients. Oh, hey, you can get a bigger FHA loan, right? Holiday calls is the best and easiest right now, right? What'd you do for Thanksgiving? What are you doing for Christmas? Write it down in your CRM. Or if you got a memory like I don't have, then you don't have to do that. Or my favorite script is just checking in, right? If you're a real estate agent, I coach them, they all laugh. I say lender reminder. And then of course I tell you loan officers, agent reminder, you all laugh, they don't, because we know that realtors aren't always following up. And this is really an important call. And then kind of what's next, right? You're going to let them know what's the next thing that's going on. You're going to call your clients who are buying within 30 days every week. If they're buying within 60 days, you're going to call them every other week. And then if you're going to call them every 3 to 4 weeks if they're buying more than 60 days out, especially those of you who are seasonal, like in Arizona. We have people who come in for the Super Bowl next month or 2 months from now, whenever it is, visiting their friends for the holidays. It's beautiful here. Sorry if you have snow, it's 60 degrees out. And we have people who come in, and you're going to call them until they buy or die, right? Thursday, leads, Sphere if you're a realtor, loan application, get them to get a pre-qual if you're a loan officer. And real estate agents are going to do, guess what? Because your clients have an internet addiction, they probably do too. And they're going online for a Zestimate, right? We know that they're doing that. And so they should be calling their clients and doing a real estate review, right? They should be letting them know what they see is the value of their home and giving them update on the market, because they're all worried about it right now. It's a great way for a real estate agent to provide value, right? Loan officers should be doing partner calls on Thursdays. Why are we doing it? We're protecting our weekend. We're protecting it from them. Surprise Friday night, surprise Saturday night, surprise Sunday morning that they have a miracle lead that just showed up that needs a pre-qual to write an offer. If you talk to them on Thursday, then you know who's taking out buyers, so that you can call them on Monday. You know who is taking out, do an open house, and call them on Monday. And you also know who forgot to refer you somebody, so that now you have a day and a half to track them down, so you don't have to worry about getting their pre-qual on Friday night. And you're going to give them client updates because you just called their clients the day before. You're going to ask them what their weekend plans are. That's how you're going to know these things. You're going to do holiday calls, rate market updates, program updates, just checking. And these are all the things I did on my 100 calls yesterday, 51 people that I talked to. These were all the conversations that I had with them. You're going to call your best agents every week, everyone else biweekly, next level biweekly, and then everyone else, the agent who gives you one transaction a year, guess what? You should be calling that agent at least every month, every 3 to 4 weeks, because you want that one transaction, because they're going to carry that transaction to you, which is going to be awesome. That person's going to be stuck to you because they're stuck to that agent. Friday, leads, Sphere if you're a realtor, loan applicants who haven't gone across the line. And really, this is your weekly wrap up, right? I mean, ultimately, you want to set your weekend so that you can hopefully unplug and relax. You're going to tie up loose ends. Now, if you're a loan officer, you should be, because your clients have an internet addiction, doing annual mortgage reviews, right? And, it's just something I'm super passionate about. If you want to see it, just go to Mortgage Coach YouTube channel, annual mortgage review. You can see all the annual mortgage review calls I did with Dave. Before I was ever buddies with Dave, I was the guy that he called about annual mortgage review interviews, and I did a bunch of them. Including in 2016. It's probably my best one because it gives all the details of still the system that my team uses. Of course, I'm going to recommend using Mortgage Coach because I love Dave and I love the product. Everyone says, what about weekends, Todd? And weekends, I don't want anyone to have to work on weekends. Realtors have to do that. So I recommend sometimes realtors combine, some of those days into one day. If you're not that busy, you can combine your Tuesday update calls and your Wednesday check-ins into one day. But, ultimately I like the habit of doing it each day. Just like if you worked at Starbucks, maybe there's different days where you do different things at Starbucks. But ultimately you're building out a work schedule for you. And I blocked 3 hours for it every day. And it didn't always take me 3 hours. If it did, it was great. If I had to call that many pre-qualified clients or that many Tuesday update calls, that was a pretty dang good day that I had that many I had to do. But oftentimes it was just 30 minutes of calls. Well, great. Then I could go on. I had all that time blocked where I could actually work on something else, work on my project list, reach out to a couple more people, do that Facebook post I was supposed to do, that kind of thing. All right. So real quick, let's talk about helping others. Because this is really the key, right? So remember, we'll get out to you all the link to sign up for the one for next week to invite your realtors to. And again, the script is, hey, my friend Todd, my coach Todd, my mentor Todd, a guy I know Todd, whatever that is, hey, he's running a webinar next week for me, right? I'm running it for you, for me to invite my realtors to, so that he can teach them about business planning. And so really this is for getting them to buy in, right? That's kind of the key. So you're doing this with them to get them to buy in, number one, right? I want you to have the ability to teach it, right? So I need you to buy in. I need them to buy in. I need you to be willing to teach it. And if you're not, I'm doing the webinar for you. The secret sauce is you teaching it yourself, because if you can teach it yourself, then they view you as the expert. If you bring them to my class, they're going to view me as the expert and you the person who brought them, which is still great. And then maybe you can next year teach it, or maybe you'll teach some more people who didn't attend the following week, right? That's the whole point of it. You're going to help them write it afterwards. So again, regardless of whether you do it with them yourselves or whether you do afterwards, you're going to help them write it. So you have to have your plan done, because that way you can talk about the experience, the struggles that you had, the inspiration that you had, and then you're going to help them right there. So you just sit there with them and help them write it. So everyone that you invite to attend or one-on-one, you're going to do that. So some of the meetings that I have from my 100 calls yesterday are to sit down with people and help them write their business plans. And I love to do it. And then you're going to agree on the accountability, right? This is the really key, because this is how you're going to build a relationship with them. This is how you're going to help them grow their business. And this is ultimately how you're going to get more business from them for yourself. But really, it's about the relationship. Relationships matter more than ever right now. And so that's really the key. And so you got to agree on what's that cadence of accountability. It could be weekly, your best people weekly, right? Some people only want it once a month or every other week. I used to meet with my best folks once a month. I met with them face to face. I talked to them every week about it. The other people, I might have only checked in with them on the phone once a month and then met with them quarterly, but I used it as an opportunity to get face-to-face, belly-to-belly with people. And I think that you should too. Again, so weekly check-in, monthly in person, right? That would be one of the options. Just kind of other thoughts and ideas as I realize we're hitting 12:59 and I got to be on my group coaching call in a minute. I'm going to be late for all of you in my group coaching group who are on there. So I would say other thoughts and ideas is really this, right? Think about what hit home to you the most. And what I would like to think it is that activities lead to results, right? Intentions matter. Number two is I would say, what's your standard? You have to set a standard for yourself. You have to commit each week. And I tend to find that people who get serious about committing to a number of activities are the ones who get the results that they want. Because for me, that might've been on a Friday afternoon, making 5 more phone calls. Like for me, I committed to dial till 5:30 yesterday. I dialed right till 5:30. I took the last person as I was heading home to take my daughter out for date night for dinner. And I finished that last call in the car because I wanted to get home and I wanted to be, on the road, but it's what's your standard? And then really, who can you help? Like, how can you do more for other people by being a better leader? And the best way to be a better leader, right? Self-leadership precedes team leadership. You got to lead yourself first. But then you have this opportunity to help them. And then probably the last thing I would say is think about the idea of having your own set schedule. Because really that is, I think, the biggest struggle that I see with loan officers. They get to the office and they're like, realtors, they get to the office or they're working from home. And they say, like, what do I do next? And so if you have this piece where, I got to make 10 phone calls, then you're going to make 10 phone calls. If you have this thing where I got to call every lead, even if it's only one lead, then you're going to do that lead first. And this is how you get momentum for your day. Like for me, once I got the first calls done in the first hour, I had serious momentum and I was fired up. And so that's really what I want for all of you. So again, Todd at Win by Noon is where you can reach me, and just know, I continue I continue to want to pour into all of you. I mean, to me, this is the funnest thing that I get to do. And so remember, someone's asking me about the business planning tool. I don't know if I have it on here. So again, real quick, let me just send this to you and then I'm really going to kick you all off. So you're going to go to winbynoon.com/business planning tool to get that. And then also just email me and I'll get you guys everyone who was on here, I'll give you the links to the rest of the stuff. But that'll get us going. And so that was a lot. All right, 1 hour and 2 minutes. You're all the best. Reach out to me. Let me know how I can help. I appreciate you all. And I can just tell you this, if you are committed to yourself first and you do a business plan that you're committed to, that meets all the SMART goals, that has all the specificity needed, you're going to crush 2023. If you take it a step further and you bring in some accountability, whether it's another loan officer in your office, whether it's your team leader, whether your team leader and some loan officers below you, and you bring it out to your partners and potential partners, then you're really going to crush it. I got out there, I taught this to classes of realtors, to brokerages full of agents. And it was just an easy way for me to get those follow-up appointments. I know you all can do it too. Thanks for being here. Sorry I rushed this last few minutes, but appreciate you all. Talk to you.